Hello. How is everybody doing tonight? We have a bit of a special announcement tonight. We are going to be doing one of these meet the expert sort of scenarios where it allows you to get to know somebody who we're bringing into the fold in one way or another and talk to them about their, pretty much their career, what they're doing in life, where they kind of came from, how they got to where they're going, and all those sort of things. And usually it's packaged with some sort of cool announcement as to how they are contributing towards our wonderful community. In this particular case, this wonderful person's name is Skylar Surra. I will give you the quick rundown on Skylar, and then I'll let him come in and tell you more of the finer points. But Skylar is working at Riot Games, a small company you might have heard of in passing. And he is, I think, his official, it's funny because I'm going to ask him this when he's on, but if you take a look at his LinkedIn, he says it's a principal animator over there. But I know that he's been doing more sort of technical and R&D like work lately. So maybe, I don't know if his title changed or if he just stuck the title and he's just doing kind of more interesting things now. I don't know. Well, we're going to find out from him. That's the best. That's the only reason I brought him on. Now, to be honest, I want to know more about him, so I'm bringing him on so I can ask him questions live, because what better way to do that? So I guess I'll just bring him in like I usually do, and we can get to know this fine individual, and we can talk a little bit about him, and we'll leave some question time at the end. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions because I'm sure he's got lots of answers for you. Yeah, so let's bring him in, and we'll save some time at the end. Skylar Surra. Welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
How are you, sir? Yeah, it's good. I'm glad.
I am well.
Good. That is good. You have something that says everything is better, which is good, I guess.
Everything is better when we draw together.
That's very sweet. I like that shirt. I need to get myself one of those. I'm actually trying to collect shirts that are like this, like positive message shirts that I can always be wearing on stream. I have one that just like fine print that just says "Be nice." I'm wearing my Hulk one tonight, so it's not exactly what I would consider a it's positive, I guess, in a way, positive aggression. I don't know.
Well, I always try to wear cool shirts in the stream, and then you only ever see the top bit of it. So they need to make like streaming shirts that start at like the neckline, so you can see a little bit more of them.
It's so funny because considering the world we live in now, where everything's done online, you would think there would be a whole market for that. You should patent that idea and just be like streaming T-shirts. We get it. We put all the important information is like above the breast, right there. Boom. That's awesome. Okay, so Skylar, give us a little bit of rundown on you in a nutshell. Like where'd you go to school? Why did you get into this crazy industry? Give us the sort of you in a nutshell version.
Well, I mean, now I am, as you noted, I'm a principal animator at Riot Games. And to answer your question about like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
At Riot, the principal role is honestly like Riot really likes to be unique with their roles. So,
Sure.
principal really is you can kind of take a couple different paths after
Okay.
senior,
Okay.
and principal. You can kind of become a principal through just pure craft expertise. Like, there's a couple principals at the studio that are like super craft experts. Like, they're just like the most amazing animators you ever worked with. I sort of took the other side of the path, which is more the like technical expertise role. We don't have like a specific role that's like technical animator. We have tech artists that are animators, and we have animators that are technical. But if you sort of become a very technical animator, you can still become a principal.
Got it. You don't differentiate.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of that. Now I'll talk a little bit about my past.
Sure.
I actually grew up in Pennsylvania, in the middle of nowhere, in a tiny little town in the country.
Lots of opportunities to learn animation.
Yeah. So there is not much as far as an art scene or interesting animation stuff going on there. But I had the fortune of having an amazing teacher in high school who got me like really interested in art, and it was sort of a weird thing that his son had gone to school for animation. And so animation as like a job was sort of like floating around.
Yeah, sure.
So, well, I didn't really like touch animation in high school. I was really interested in it as like a job opportunity where you could like basically go get paid to make some kind of art. And I grew up in the 90s, and of course like there was a lot of really cool like visual effects stuff happening, be it with like the Star Wars prequel trilogies that came out that I was like super into, but probably more inspirational was like Lord of the Rings. I watched Lord of the Rings and all those like millions of behind the scenes features, and was just like enamored by like the idea of doing like VFX kind of stuff. And so as far as like what kind of inspired me into the industry, that was definitely it. And I think coming out of high school and into college, I was definitely like pretty set that I was like going to go be like a film VFX artist or something like that. And well,
then when I didn't even occur to you at the time.
Yeah, it's funny because I like definitely spent more time playing video games than watching movies, but it's like weird. I think like a lot of people who think about animation just like it automatically is associated with film for them.
I did the same thing. I didn't get into video games until way later, but I was obsessed over like animated feature films and VFX, just like you were. I was just like, and then it occurred to me that I'm like, wait a minute. Yeah, that's funny.
Exactly. And so I actually went to school with like very artistic aspirations that I was going to become a 2D animator. And so I went and learned 2D animation. I actually have my degree is in like 2D hand drawn animation. And I'd love to say that I was like really good at that, but actually I like wasn't the best at drawing, which is kind of an essential skill for being a 2D animator.
It's also ironic considering your t-shirt, but
Yeah. Well, I actually like really like drawing. I would say
your drawing is actually pretty good now.
I'm a reasonable draftsman, but I think what I always struggled with 2D animation was like I can make like a nice illustration, but I had a very difficult time like maintaining volumes and drawing it. I mean, that is like a whole different skill altogether.
It is. I used to call it. I went through classical animation myself in school, and I used to call it the drawing hangover that you would get after drawing, like because your brain works like it's overheating because of all that work that it needs to do to process the three dimensionality of these forms as you're animating. Man, I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, I still to this day admire people that can do it because I just can't wrap my head around like thinking about an object from multiple directions in 3D space. It's just mind blowing. So I loved that though. I loved 2D animation, and it was unfortunately poor timing because as I was coming out of school, I specifically remember like reading an article, I think like my last year in school, that like Disney was mostly shutting down its 2D department, and then everything kind of dried up. So as soon as I got out of college, that industry was just completely dry for 2D specifically. And so I looked around at opportunities and saw everything was 3D, and decided to go do Animation Mentor after that. And I did the Animation Mentor program, which was amazing. I mean, anyone has worked with that or taken any classes from them will know that they do like a pretty amazing job. And I sort of had like a fortuitous. So as it's funny, as I went through Animation Mentor, I got like less and less interested in film, even though it was a film track.
Interesting.
And I don't want to cast any aspersions on the film industry, but it was surprising how many teachers in Animation Mentor were like just really like stressed out about their jobs and would like, it would like talk about, you know, there's a lot of burnout in the film industry. It's not for everyone. And for someone who is like looking for a little bit of a more stress-free life, games started to come into the back of my mind. And
I mean, how hard can they be, right? Games are fun. They couldn't possibly be stressful.
It's funny. I like remember when I was studying 2D in college, there was an animator who came, who was like a alumni who came back, and he was working in games. And, you know, he came in and he showed, look, here's like looping. I made these like looping idle animations, these looping run animations. I was like, that looks easy compared to, that was like what I thought at the time. You know what I mean? I was like, I can make like a looping. And I remember I went home and I like downloaded Maya and downloaded this,
I can do this.
There was like this grumpy, like blue Muppet looking rig that had like a big head. Maybe some of you know this guy. I don't remember what he was called.
There's so many rigs from back then, but I bet you if you would have a picture of it, it would make a lot of us sort of
I'm sure a lot of you would have like nostalgia for it. But I remember then trying to make a looping animation and being like, oh no, this is not as easy as it looks. But anyway, so I did Animation Mentor, and I had a sort of fortuitous circumstance come out of that where I started applying to some game studios after that. And then it happened that one of the studios I applied to, one of my mentors that had been like one of my teachers in Animation Mentor, worked there. Now, I didn't even know this, saw my work, and we just sort of had a conversation, and they were willing to take a chance on a student as like a contractor nobody. And I went and worked at 38 Studios on the Kingdoms of Amalur MMO, which no one will probably know because it never released.
But I remember there was a decent amount of hype about it, and then it kind of just disappeared. I was a big MMO guy, so I mean, I was following the news on all MMOs at the time, so I think that's maybe the only reason I knew.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a very exciting project. The and still to this day, I like love the work that we did on it. It was. The sort of year that I started working there, I think it was in like 2011, the Kingdoms of Amalur single player RPG had come out, and that was actually pretty well received. It was like a very cool, like action combat RPG game. And that was sort of the stepping stone for, they were already developing the MMO in that universe. It was a, they had a lot of big names attached to it. Like R.A. Salvatore had like written the story for the world and whatnot. And, anyways, the short of it is they ran out of money like a year before it was going to be finished after working on it for like 6.5 years.
Man.
And so like many people in this industry, my first job ended up with me in a box in front of the studio, literally in the rain.
Literally nothing to show for it either. That's the problem, right?
Well, so I guess I can say now, because the studio is just like completely gone, but I basically had to smuggle a hard drive to one of the people who still worked there to like get my work out.
It's a real problem in this industry, especially if you work on a lot of these big AAA games. And if you're new out of school and you do that, you're kind of like, it's scary because it's like, now what do I do? So usually with some sort of sneaky scenario has to go down to be able to make sure that, like, it's in the industry, there's sort of like this don't ask, don't tell policy typically. Like if you can sort of somehow show somebody something that's not going to suddenly get leaked out there into the wild, like you got to use your discretion. But I mean, you were in a weird circumstance because literally the whole thing was just shut down. So what are you going to do?
And it was I was basically saved by one of the tech artists who just so happened to have days before, who maybe he had an inkling, copied the whole game to a hard drive. So I was able to get actually all my work, and you can actually go, if you search my name on Vimeo, you can go watch a reel of that. It was pretty cool actually. Was it that tree looking creature? Is that from that game? Yes, that's what I was. That animation is dope. You have to check out his animation. This one I'm talking about right now. If you go find what is your, like, let me link it. What is your Vimeo? Do you remember it offhand? Yeah, here actually, I literally have it in a tab. Yeah, okay. Perfect. I'll just put. That's cool. I'm just relaying it over here. Hold on a second.
We have a private chat you guys aren't allowed to see. So where we talk about all you people in chat behind your backs. Let me go here and paste it there. So, oh, wow, look at this. Someone beat me to it. Barnes. Click on the draw.
But it was pretty cool to work there, and because that tree creature is kind of interesting because
Oh,
I mean
man.
I came in as a contractor, I wasn't even like a full-time employee, and they brought me in and were like, hey, here's this giant list of creatures that are like partially animated and these big, and basically I was working on a backlog of all the just stuff that no one else wanted to work on because there was all these people who've been working on it for years. And they were like, well, we've like made different for all I know, there could have been 10 other iterations of that tree thing before I got a hold of it.
You just like, this new fun stuff for me to do, I'll just do it.
Yeah, and since I was a contractor and I just had this big list, nobody was really paying that much attention to me time-wise, and so I was able to spend a lot of time animating that thing. I mean, it was janky as all get out. I mean, you may notice that I think one of the things that I like about the animations on that character is that they almost have like a stop motion-y feel to them.
Totally. It's kind of like there's a texture to it, which I really like.
Well, and the texture is because it all had to be animated on ones because the rig was so bad. So
I got that feeling. But it, that must have taken quite a bit of time to kind of clean up so it wasn't completely jittery. So it was lines and things like that would have because you did such a good job having them collide with the ground, and I thought to myself that ain't an easy looking animation to get done.
Yeah, so all those vines they were I think 16 joints long, and they were only had an IK space, which is better than only having an FK space.
Around a little bit better,
but then in any of the points where like you wanted them to sort of hang and do the other stuff, like it's the exact opposite problem.
That's totally the problem with FK and IK, right? It's like if only there was this one that could just be the perfect one, but it's like IK is able to do things that IK is like only able to do. I always say that if I had to pick between one, it would be the IK, because at least IK you could theoretically lock it down on the ground, and then you would just suck to try to make it feel like flowy in the air. But if it was the other way around, you could make it flowy like all day long. But when you try to lock it down on the ground, you're going to want to shoot yourself in the face.
Oh yeah, so, yeah, absolutely. So that was actually a pretty cool experience. I mean, as far as first jobs go, despite it kind of ending in a sad way, I had a pretty cool reel of stuff coming out of there. And the irony is, because I was a contractor, I got let go about a week before everyone else. There was many people that kind of like the more salaried employees got let go later. Because of that, I kind of had a week to work on reel and everything ahead of everybody else. And so I think when I had already had like my reel sent out to studios before a lot of other people were even looking. And so thankfully I was able to get an interview with a couple studios and ended up at Riot as an associate animator in 2012. Yeah, so I've been at Riot for coming up on in August. It will be 9 years. And I was kind of brought in.
Now.
What's that?
I think you're part of the furniture. It's
like I know, right?
Right in. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was kind of brought in to help at the time when they were like, I mean, if any of you played League of Legends in 2012 when it came out. Yeah. Well, in those days, it was not great looking, and everybody, I think, even who worked on it, will admit that it had like a pretty weird aesthetic. It was
I'm
like
with
a
you
sort
on
of
this.
comic booky.
Yeah. But then it suddenly did this, boop, and it like people. There was clear a bunch of they were even reanimating older characters, even and upgrading them. They kind of went through the similar what WoW went through a little while ago, where they had a team of people go in there and like kind of clean up even the old original sort of base core system animations. So I guess you guys did the same thing, right? Just tore into it.
Absolutely. Well, it was funny because when I was working at 38 Studios, I was like the only person on the team who played League of Legends. Everyone else played Dota 2, and because I was on the art team, and all the artists were like, League of Legends is terrible art. Like,
I feel the same way.
Look at how bad it looks, and look how great Dota is with its beautiful lighting and everything. And I have to agree, but
it's different now, though. Way different now. Way different. League is like they definitely up their game in a big way. So you were part of that team, I guess, like part of like Operation Let's Show Dota 2 what we're made of, or?
Yeah, so I mean, at the time, the game was super popular, and it was becoming more and more obvious to them that like they needed to overhaul the art and like bring it up to a more like AAA game, because
especially when Dota was sort of encroaching on their
space, and
right?
it was clearly there's like a clear gap in the art. And I mean, I want to be totally fair to the team that made League of Legends was so small, particularly the art team.
I've heard,
and the fact that it made it to be what it is actually mind blowing.
They put the time and energy in the areas that they needed to. Like, I mean, the game was fun, and that's why people were playing it. And they had a really good business model. The idea that you could play this game for free, and they rotated the roster, so you could always get a taste of these other characters. And if you really like one, you want to continue playing them, you just have to buy them. It's sort of like the first play is always free kind of scenario. It was smart. It was like they were way ahead of their time. They essentially solidified the genre of MOBAs. And then, you know, once they were secure, I guess financially, they could invest, which is what they did.
That's you're just throwing shade on the game was fun. But I mean, they definitely, I mean, and they would admit this too, that they focused on the gameplay more than the art, which I think was obviously the right decision for the team they had. But it's interesting, like when I joined, you know, a lot of the animators who had, you know, worked on the original game were still there at the time, and you know, they had a very different mentality on the game. You know, they're like, it looks great for what it is. Like, we had like less than a week to like animate each of these characters, you know? So when you take into account like the actual restrictions that were put on them and how fast they were making it and how small the team was, it's actually an incredible feat that it looked as good as it did. But yeah, I was brought in 2012 as sort of early on in the art team. Like, the team really like blew up in 2012, 2013, specifically to solve that problem. And I had the pleasure of working on the like map overhaul, all the art they did on that. I animated a lot of the creatures. Like I animated the dragon that you fight and kill, and the little Krug guys. They're like these little rock monsters. And during that time, I worked on pretty much every team on League of Legends. I spent about a year on the skins team, which is now like personalization, doing skins. I worked on the champion team doing new champions. For anyone who's League people, I worked on Azir and Zach, who's like a goo guy, and Thresh, who's like a ghosty hooky guy.
You worked on one of my favorite characters, actually.
Oh yeah, which one?
She's a little crazy. She's got a crazy big gun. You might know who I'm talking about. I saw her in your
Jinx.
Jinx.
Yeah,
I love this character so much. She's hands down one of my faves. And I love Jinx themed decks in Legends of Runeterra. I can't get enough of her deck because it's just all over the place, crazy. I love it.
Yeah, she's a big fan favorite, which is surprising. I mean, I think she's great, but at the time, like, I don't think anyone. It's funny, like, what fans end up attaching themselves to, because we always like think like, oh, this is going to be the one. This is the one that everyone's going to love. And then sometimes, and then no one cares. And then sometimes we're like, it's like a cool girl with a gun. You know, she's got.
That's not the light. She's a little unhinged.
People love her. Yeah,
it reminds me a little bit of like Harley Quinn in a way. Like, she's totally unhinged, and like I love that animation. You'll see it on his Vimeo. Go take a look at this little moment where she's like treating her gun like a puppet, and she's talking to her gun. It's honestly like it's to die for. I really like that animation a lot.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, the pitch is pretty clear. It's like crazy girl with guns. I think that's why it resonates. Is it's just like such a simple and clear theme. And it's funny because like, that character specifically, I'd love to say that I like animated a lot of her, but I spent the vast majority of time animating just her like weapon transitions, because she like switches weapons all the time. Yeah. And that character is actually the one that kind of like, there was a bunch of like like back end blending and whatnot we had to do to make all that work, and I figured all that out, and that was kind of my first step into the more like technical, just like figure out how to make it all look good, and building like all these weird transition animations. And you know, like one of the big things was like, how does she get into her emotes if she has her rocket launcher out versus her gun out? And so we had to build like all these different transitions for in and out of those. So that was like an interesting project, and I think was maybe one of the first times that I was like, oh, there's like this whole other part to game animation, which is like not just making the animations look good, but building all these bits and bobs and problem solving to kind of get the final look that you want. And that part of the
You just
animation has
shine
maybe
into it.
excited me more
Yeah.
over the years than even the animation. So,
Well, that's the part that I think is the most interesting part, because it's like you are actually that particular very interesting, very complicated intersection is the thing that actually really makes the game look and play well, because you can make the best, you can have a team of the biggest all-star team of animators. No problem. You can have a whole, all of them, get all the legends and put them in a room and build all this amazing data. But unless some geniuses sit down and take the time to figure out how to utilize and leverage that data in a game and get it playing properly when it should, then it's not going to make a difference of who you have on that team. And I'm going to take a quick second here too, just because I would be remiss and negligent to not just say, just to clarify a point earlier. When I played League a long time ago, I never actually looked at the animations and thought they were bad. I think the problem was just I felt like it was almost like it was kind of all over the place a little bit. Like I felt like some were really good and some were okay, and like it didn't feel like it had like a bar that everyone was meeting. And and then you comparatively to Dota 2, they had these very like detailed, subtle animations and like you said, the overall look. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I still prefer Dota 2, but this is a gameplay reason. I like it because I like it. I like the annoying technical bits of it. League is a bit more accessible, I find, and I think it's why it appeals to so many people a bit more than Dota. Both have extremely toxic communities, unfortunately.
you like denying and all the like really.
I do. I don't know why. It's stupid. Like it makes no sense, and it's just like, and the amount of like cross sectionality of the skills that you have as you're leveling up, and then you keep adding to it, because now you actually have like these talent trees, and like it gets ridiculous. And then combine that with the actual the gear and how much of a difference it makes, and then you combine that with the fact that these shards now, like they've used to have the scepter, but now it's like a shard and the full scepter, and they themselves modify some big quality of your character. Anyways, long story short, I'm a big nerd for the tricky technical games like this, and I just gravitate towards it because I think I'm a glutton for punishment, to be completely honest.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I have to say that, like, while I dragged my feet about it, I ended up playing a ton of Dota 2 with all the folks at 38 Studios. And the one thing I really admire about Dota 2 is how sort of over the top you can get in the game. Like League of Legends has this sort of ceiling built in a lot of ways, so that like any specific character can't like totally carry the game. But Dota allows for these like magnificent moments where like, I mean, I played the Darkseer a lot, and the Darkseer particularly has like these really like high moments where you can like cast your ult in just the right way and summon like a million ghost people. And and so there's something to be said for that. And it's funny because like, when I joined League of Legends, I had come from playing Dota a lot with my pals from work, and then I played like League with my brother. And they had open champion pitches at the time when I joined Riot.
Oh, wow, that's fun. And like, just
I was
with an idea.
Yeah, they had like an open period where you could go to the designers and basically pitch ideas to them, which was pretty cool. And I was always pitching champions that I think were like actually Dota champions, because I was like, funny. Listen, you build mechs for your friends, and then everybody can like jump in the mech and power the mech, and that's like their ultimate. And they were like, come on, man, we like this, it's too much. Like, we're League of Legends, we need to a little bit simpler.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, what's interesting about those two games is they seem to have captured markets. There's a lot of people who play both because they have friends who play one or the other. You know what I mean? Like it's, and I've been playing more League lately because I've been curious about all of the work that's gone on over there. And I've always liked it. I don't know why. I get sucked in more to the Dota side. But one thing I could say about Riot, and this might be interesting, you might have some perspective on this. The thing that blew my mind was when Riot started putting out these, apparently you guys built a team over there that were putting out these cinematics that are like mind-blowingly good, like literally eyeball melting good. I remember watching I think the first one that came out, I literally watched it like probably 10 times back to back. I just couldn't believe my eyes. The way that they captured the fantasy of these characters and like brought this personality to them that felt so tangible. I mean, games rarely do this, and what a great idea, because you never really get that close to hang out. Like, it makes it like, like they do this with Overwatch, but Overwatch, it's like, I feel like you kind of, I don't know, maybe because you're a bit more like close to them because it's a, you know, first person game, but like top down, you lose that sort of proximity. So getting to see them kind of be alive like this was such a genius idea because it brought so much more atmosphere to the game, you know?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you kind of like recognize one of the core, I don't want to say it's like a problem, but like one of the challenges with League of Legends is the camera is very impersonal. And so selling both like fantasy and literally selling you like the champion idea is hard from that camera. And so very early on, they gravitated towards mediums that would allow them to like highlight the fantasy of the character outside the game in interesting ways. Because I mean, I think it's true of any game that you kind of like think of and imagine the character is whatever the coolest version of them you've seen. And you know, so being able to, for example, see Jinx in that like cinematic that they released when she came out, being crazy, and it was like a music video, and it was very cool. That's like what everyone imagines it is in the game, even if like in the moment when you're playing it, it's like not that neat. I mean, it's not neat, but it's very impersonal, right? And so that's been kind of interesting to see that evolve over the years from like, I think originally it was more like a marketing thing, and now it's become like just a part of Riot, that they're a little bit more of like a multimedia company. And when they make a new character, it's like, well, it's not just a character for League of Legends now. It's a character for League of Legends, and it's a character for Legends of Runeterra, and it's a character in these like cinematics that people are going to know and see. And so it's like been kind of a change in perspective that's pretty cool. And I think it's now a little bit more daunting to like make champions on League of Legends, because back in the day it was like all you had to worry about was that in-game camera. And now you're like, oh no, this thing's going to be shown in like every medium you can imagine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's going to be seen in every which way, and it's going to just be. It's funny too, because it's like it almost like Riot kind of sorted out that the characters are kind of the brand, right? And they were like, let's celebrate that and let's get in there and get, you know, it's crazy to think that you started in a game that was, you know, League of Legends, which, you know, again, was more functional. Like the game played well and was exciting, but to go from that to like suddenly being like what I would consider, and I'm saying this with all honesty, one of the best in the business when it comes to like animation quality and character, like just character portrayal. Because when Riot started putting out those cinematics, I was just like, these guys aren't kidding around. And I remember even signing a petition not that long ago, where I was like, there was a petition floating around. It was like literally demanding Riot make a feature film because the stuff was so good. Everyone's like, just take our money, just take the money, do a crowdfunding, do a Kickstarter. We will give you all the money you need. Just go make that movie. So I thought that was pretty funny. I signed that. And no movie.
Well,
come on, guys, get with it.
And I mean, and it's exciting to see us kind of like making our way towards that. I mean, just this past week they announced Arcane, which I can't really talk about much, but is pretty amazing. And well, I think people's first chance to kind of see a lot of these characters in a more like story-driven cinematic experience. So I'm super stoked about it, having, you know, worked there for so long and been one of those people, even internally, that would have signed that petition saying like, let's make a movie or whatever, you know?
Yeah, that's fun though. I mean, that must be exciting to be at a company though, where you start to, because I mean, being an animator, I mean, obviously this would fill you with a lot of pride, because you're like, wow, my company's doing some pretty amazing stuff. Like you're taking a look around. I mean, there's like, maybe I could count maybe on two hands maximum, maybe not even full two hands, the number of studios that I feel like put out that kind of quality, and Riot's one of them. And I'm not saying it just because you're in the room. I'm saying it because it's true, and I'm sure people in chat would agree with me. And so it must feel fun to be. You know, like I've never been there. I've never been like, I mean, I worked at Ubisoft, and I mean, Ubisoft is definitely known for, you know, quality games, and they put a lot of work into their character. And Assassins, obviously, they definitely were what you would consider a milestone, or like I don't know what you would say, like a trailblazer when it comes to realization of character in games. So, I mean, I guess I did get a taste of it. I never worked on an Assassin's game, so I didn't really get a feel that I was like part of that, like that charge. Like when I look at a game like, you know, The Last of Us, I'm thinking, what does it feel like to be on a game where you're like literally like leading the charge on like realization and drama in a game? Like that must feel exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and I have like a couple like anecdotal experiences with that are kind of neat. I mean, you've probably noticed that like Riot's, like we don't. I want to be clear, we don't do all those cinematics in house. There's been a couple cinematics that they did in
Yeah.
house, but we partner with a lot of different
Yeah.
studios around the world to make a lot of those cinematics. And I think that's one of the coolest things about Riot is they partner with a lot of different studios, and so you
Smart.
see the characters in a lot of
Yeah.
different like
Yeah.
mediums. There's like a lot of the more realistic stuff that we've done with Blur. There's the sort
Yeah.
of painterly stuff that we've done with like Passion Paris and like everything
Yeah.
in between as well. But Riot's like done a really good job, I think, of maintaining consistency of like characters' personality and the things
Yeah.
that really like make them cool. I think one of the coolest moments for me was actually a Jinx thing. It's like when I was working on Jinx, she has these really like long blue ponytails. And you know, one of the most boring sets of animations for the characters was that we had to do either like 4 or 5 idle variants, which is just like, it's like, oh, if the player just stands there, what does the character do? Do you know what I mean? Like, what are the fidgets, basically?
Yep.
Which is not really
stuff.
something you ever see in League of Legends because you're constantly moving. And so
exactly, it's good for like menu screens maybe, but like not in the game.
Well, and we don't even show our 3D models animated in a menu, so you don't even see that. It's literally the only moment you'll see these animations is if they're not doing anything in the game.
Yeah, it's the only time you ever see it is in that moment of excitement when you realize that the enemy is gone AFK and you're about to kill them, and so you see them only for a few moments because you're not going to waste any time. You're going to dispatch them, and then they're going to be gone, and you don't get to enjoy the cool breakouts that were done. That's funny.
Well, so I had done this animation where she like grabs her ponytail and like just kind of like spins it around, and does this, and it was just like a little idle thing. And then when they and then I didn't have any input or any, you know, relationship to the like music video that they ended up releasing. And then in that video, in one of the scenes when she's like walking down like the hallway, she's like doing that. And I was like, that was my idea. I did that. That's great. Perfect. It was like super cool to like see, you know, that work that to me was like kind of a throwaway thing in the game. Then sort of those things people get attached to and sort of translate into these much bigger and much more like front and center feature cinematic things. So it's like pretty cool.
Built, you kind of built it. It was now part of her DNA. And so like people were now using it as a reference, and now that's who she is. And she does these things now. That's cool. I want to be cognitive of the time just because it is 11 minutes after 10. And I think that you and I could probably nerd out for the entire evening. It's happened before. We've had some nice conversations in the past. So I think I want to just take a minute here to talk a little bit about the thing that you and I have been conspiring on. So Skylar and I, we've been talking for a while now about. Oh, by the way, just quick little thing I wanted to do. I forgot to do this. Let me just scroll up a little bit. You've been uncovered. Hold on, right here. Check this out.
Yeah, you got me.
That's the guy. You got the guy. This is definitely that guy. So, congratulations to those who spotted him. The witness, so much for the witness protection program, Skylar.
I know. Surra. It's like the only time you'll ever see my face on the internet is in that video, as Brent was observing before this meeting.
Exactly. So Skylar, so something that we've been really wanting to do, as you all know, we are really invested in doing some of these learning paths. These learning paths are more kind of like, you know, partnering up with people who have experience putting together content that's not just specific little teeny tutorials, but like, you know, putting together something that actually has some depth and it has like a kind of a trajectory, an arc, something that is built in small parts, but can in the whole, the gestalt of it will teach a bigger thing that you can walk away having really learned a subject as opposed to just maybe a little tip or a trick. Skylar has some experience doing exactly that because he was actually the one building that over at Animation Mentor. So when we started talking, he had a passion for making sure that he continues doing that kind of work, because that's something that the two of us feel very, very strongly about. This idea that if you want to be an animator in the animation industry, it is not enough that you just go to animation school. You need to understand at least how these little bits fit together. I don't expect you to suddenly become a programmer, but I do expect you to understand what a blend tree is, what a state machine is, and how these things correlate. And because it allows you to at least interface with the people who do, because nothing sucks more than working really hard on an animation and then handing it to somebody being like, please treat this baby with care and respect. and then seeing it in the game and going, oh, what have they done? This is mitigated greatly by making sure that you can actually share vocabulary and understand kind of what you're talking about, interface with either an engineer or maybe a technical animator, to make sure that the vision that you had for this is respected somehow or understood. And I think that the best way is to kind of get a better idea as to what's going on under the hood. So Skylar has done exactly that. Why don't you walk us through a little bit of what your vision was on this, and more or less what is covered in this learning path?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent the last four and a half or so years, maybe even 5 years at Riot, building like prototypes for new games. And during that, a lot of that, I had to learn like way more about that implementation side, how to build state machines, how to do all that. And that really like inspired me to try to get into teaching that aspect of games more, because one of the things that I was seeing a lot on Reels coming in, particularly from students, was fantastic animation, but no real concept of like how to implement their work into games.
Exactly.
Or if they were doing it, they were just implementing it into like already existing templates in some way, and not really grasping the sort of extent of power that they have if they learn to some of those tools themselves. And then sort of looking around out there in the space to see what education was out there. There's a lot of animation specific education around games, and there is a lot of implementation, sort of engine, how to do stuff in engine education for games. But there really isn't a lot of, or not that I've seen, there isn't as many sort of like tutorials or series that walk you through both sort of the like tactics on how to make good animation assets literally in Maya, and then implement them to get them to look just like that in game. And so that was sort of the nugget when we started talking about this, that I wanted to try to get to in a series. So the series that we're working on together is kind of a intro to both aspects of game animation, both the asset creation in Maya, and then taking those literal assets that we make from those tutorials and implementing them into the game and getting them to look how we want. And it primarily, at the beginning at least, is going to focus on like basic locomotion. So things like running, stopping, idle, breathing, really like the basic stuff. And it's intended to be, a sort of intro series for kind of a beginner on either side, or even both sides. Like if you're a person who's sort of interested in games but hasn't really like done animation before, well, you can get that aspect of it. If you're an animator who's wanted to dabble in games but has never really had that aspect of it, it should be good for you. And then if you've done neither of them, well, it's pretty intro level. So you should be able to like start off and at least, and I always have tried whenever I've done any kind of like education stuff to try to focus on you really having like a nugget of something that you can show at the end, like a tangible piece. And it's not just a bunch of tips and tricks. So really, if you follow along through the course and actually, build the assets along with me and then implement them, you should by the end have like a pretty cool looking like third person character navigation set as a sort of cool artifact from the actual series. So that's kind of the hope, at least.
That's awesome. And I would, this is where I would typically jump in and say how for years now, and I mean, some of you are going to say that I'm a bit of a broken record in this regard, but I've said in so many occasions at so many conferences, I've looked at the crowd and I've said these words. I said, if the day that someone comes to me for an interview and we're hiring for a game, and they don't just send me a link and we're like, let's take a look at your work together, and we go to YouTube or go to Vimeo and we look at it. The day that someone's coming with their laptop and then they slide it sort of mysteriously across the table and then they pull out of their bag a gamepad and they're like, it's all ready to go. I want you to play my demo reel. My brain will probably explode, and then followed by quickly calling HR and like not letting you leave the room, because you will have successfully impressed me beyond my capacity to be impressed. And I think that it's funny that I say it, but yet no one really ever seems to do it. I'm starting to see it now. I'm starting to see demo reels where there's at least some OBS, like some screen recordings of maybe something you've done in engine. And I think that you need to do that more. I think as an animator, you need to celebrate this. And because what you're saying when you do that on a demo reel, even if everything's not perfect, it's saying that, look, I get it. Like, I understand what game animation's about. I'm here to learn. I wanted to be able to get better at this, but I'm not just learning the one side of this equation. I'm really trying to embrace both. And because that's what the job is. And it's becoming more and more that, the more that these engines become more accessible to content creators, is that means that we can free up engineers to do more engineering things rather than holding the hands of animators and just implementing video animations into the game. They can be there to kind of, do the tougher things. And now it's kind of falling more to the animation departments to do a little bit of this stuff on our own, which is great, because I feel like we're the ones that should be doing it, because we're the ones that are going to make sure that the implementation is going to match the time and effort and passion that went into making the data in the first place. So I'm telling you, this is exactly the kind of material you should be consuming, and it should be something that you should really take seriously when it comes to really taking Skylar up on the offer of having this beautiful little souvenir that you would have after learning this, that you can actually drop that right. And who's to say that you even stop there? Hopefully by the time you've actually gone through a course like this or a learning path like this, because I wouldn't call it a course, I would call it more like a segment of maybe a full course, but it'll get you to the point where you will feel more confident to start learning how to do more things. You'll get to the point where like, well, what if I were to add something like this? What if I wanted to add a feature? The character can, jump and climb and mantle a wall. Like what would go into that? You will have enough momentum probably at that point where you at least probably know what to search for on YouTube and start learning more things. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and that's one of the important things to me is, I think there are actually a lot of fantastic tutorials out there already, but like a lot of them show you how to do a thing, and I don't necessarily explain to you like what's actually happening, so you can do it yourself or expand on it. So you'll notice in a lot of the tutorials, I hope at least, that I did a good job of not just showing you how to build this specific thing, but explaining enough about the tools, because really the engine and in the state machines and all that, they're just another tool, just like in Maya, where you like learn how to use whatever tool to get your work to look like you do your arc tracker, your whatever. The same is true in the engine, is that like, knowing what this like blueprint node does, or what all the settings on this little blend between node thing does, is empowering to you to then sort of problem solve in the future things you might want to build yourself. So the hope is that while you'll end up with, like you said, a nugget that is a nice little contained thing, that if you wanted to then go build like, hey, well, I want to be able to hit C and crouch and move into like a whole nother crouching move set, that you would be able to like do that with the knowledge that you have kind of coming out of this course. And the other thing that I just wanted to emphasize is that, when I talk, this is kind of like a passionate topic of mine about game animation, is that the game animation is not about making good. It's not just about making good assets. Like each asset can be great in its own, but every time you see anything you see in a game, and particularly when you get into like this sort of AAA, is a like amalgam of a bunch of assets blending together. Anytime you see a character running or doing anything, it's probably 4 or 5, 6 different assets, and so much of it is about how it's implemented and how the blend trees work to make all that look like that. And that to me, like when I was talking earlier about kind of like getting interested in the technical side of animation, that to me is the magic of game animation, is when you build all these little pieces where some of them might be like a beautiful, like fully animated bit. One might be like an additive that's literally doing this, and then when those fit together, and that
Yes.
character then feels alive is so
Yes.
satisfying. It's
Totally.
like, it's just a very magical thing. And as an
Yep.
animator, I think you, in games, you miss out on that whole aspect of it
Yeah.
if you don't understand how to do the
Man,
implementation side.
I
And
so agree.
for me personally, anytime I've ever been in a situation where I was just like throwing assets over a wall to like an engineer or a designer, it was always just a little bit sad for me because
Yeah.
it was almost like I didn't get to have that moment where
Yeah.
I put it together and saw the magic,
Exactly.
you know?
I call it the Dr. Frankenstein moment, when you actually like literally put the things together and you like you hit the play button and you're like, oh my God, it's alive. Like
Yeah.
it really is exciting, like that you're really truly bringing this character to life in a way that, like, I've experienced other types of animation before, but this one, it kills me every single time. It never gets old when you put that kind of life or that time into building out something like that. And like you said, it's not just, you can't just see any particularly, like you're never seeing one singular thing. It's the combination of all the things. And these are the things that are necessary to make the character feel more alive, because you can't possibly drive a game with like just animating it all with just one set of data, because how would you I mean, you could, but it would require a infinite number. And they kind of went down that road with Assassin's Creed in many ways. They really went the data centric approach. And I think the way that people are trying to do it now is much more procedural and layered, where you can actually build a really good set of like base data, but then it's all about how do you modify it? How do you bank the character in a turn that makes it feel like they're actually respecting the center of balance and mass, and like all these things need to be right. Things that an animator would be doing in their shot if it was a cinematic shot, but now you got to find a way of making sure all these things line up and like multiple animations being played at the same time and still look hopefully as good as you would have animated it if you did it all by hand. And that, my friends, that is the magic, and that is really quite satisfying once you actually figure it out. And again, I don't want to scare people into thinking that, oh man, I don't know if I'm really that technical. It's like, you'd be surprised. You would surprise yourself. You got to give it some time, and you got to give it an actual shot. And don't forget that you don't necessarily need to be a pro at this. There are Skylars out there who are going to be hopefully on your team that will help you with this. And you don't need to be the only one. You don't have to figure it all out. But the point is, at least exposing yourself to it makes you as an animator better, because now you understand, oh, okay, I understand my role now. My role is not just make these singular animations. It is to make a constellation of animations that when once put together, they will become amazing and not just look good on screen, but also play well. Because I mean, we all know that if it's all about just the animation, then the game may suffer. So it has to be balanced with the mechanics. It needs to play well too. I have a bunch of, let me just really quickly, I just want to let everybody know. So I know that there's some questions piling up. You don't need to disappear anytime super soon, right? I mean, like, I don't want to over, okay.
I can hang around
10,
for a
15?
while.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
let's do it.
So I will get to your questions, but I want to make sure we have a chance to wrap this up. You were going to say something, Tyler.
Skylar, yeah. Jesus. I mean, the last thing I was going to say was just that we're kind of in a magical time right now, where only within, I would say, the past few years did this kind of implementation work even become accessible to the artists, in that most of the kind of main modern engines like Unity and Unreal have visual scripting languages now, where it used to be a land where like you had to throw it over the fence because someone had to go code it in a literal like script file, or you have to learn how to program, right? Yeah, whereas now the built into these engines are visual tools for actually doing it. And that to me is like incredible, like being able to, as an animator, do the animation and then also put it in the game is just very powerful. And I think that that's only been possible within the past few years. So it's an exciting time to learn it. Even if you're daunted by it, it's probably easier than it's ever been before. So
it's also exciting on a marketable level too. And that's what I keep trying to tell people. It's exciting also for the fact that it's newish, and there are not enough people that are embracing these things. So if if you got big hopes to get in the game industry, you really like animating, but you really want to work in games, this is your route. Because I'm telling you, not enough people are truly taking this advice and running with it. And so we're not like, I mean, it's starting to happen, but like, my point is, get in now. It's like, you remember what happened with Bitcoin? Everyone told you to buy some Bitcoin and you're like, I don't know about Bitcoin. No, this is like that, but it's like, you could put this in the bank, because I'm telling you, the industry, there's a huge revolution that's happening right now. And there's these technical animators that people are calling them. They used to be known as like, that's what you would call a rigger back in the day. Now it's like it's a whole new breed of people that are animators who understand these things, because they're worth their weight in gold. Because, like I said, engineers can now safely be put on other things to make the game run better and to build new features into the game, as opposed to do something as mundane as just literally integrating like your animations. And they're not the right person to be doing it anyways, because they're going to integrate it, I guarantee you, in a way that probably won't make you super happy. That's not entirely fair. I've worked with programmers before. There's a handful of them that I would like literally take a bullet for, because they totally get it. But unfortunately, a lot of programmers don't. But I mean, I don't get programming. It's not a surprise. Why should they understand animation? That's not their job. So yeah, it's you could, there's a vacuum forming, so you could be part of that revolution and secure your future very quickly, because people are looking for you right now. The game industry is in a big dire need for you right now. So get this done and start putting your demo reels out there. Okay, so questions. We have lots of them. So let's dig back. And if you have some for Skylar, then now's a good time. I am going to scroll back up. Oh man, my mouse. I don't know why, but there it is. It's back. It likes to like turn off on me. I'm going to scroll back and sort of I can see if I can cherry pick some from earlier. But if you do have one you've been holding on to it, now's a good time to drop it. Let's see. Scrolling. There's some good t-shirt ideas here. I like that. I accidentally hit spline, or this one's better. My life is still in blocking. I saw another one here. It was one that was show me your reference. Oh, there it is. Can I see your reference? I like that. I actually want to make that shirt. That's a good one. A lot of people getting excited that you want to make games guy. And then where was there? I scrolled up too far. Well, I'll scroll. I'll go from the bottom up, because I know there was a bunch at the bottom. Okay, here's a good one. Here's a juicy one. This is a classic. Should I learn Unity, or should I learn Unreal? That's a good question.
It is a good question. I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer to that. The truth is that many, like, while there are different tools and every engine has its own little like tricks of how they do things, the reality is that as far as like getting, like, if you like, I guess if you're looking to get a job and try and you can only have the time to learn one, learning one is fine. Most companies actually, like, if you have, like, let's say you submit a Unity reel and you have like in-game Unity stuff to a studio that's only working on Unreal stuff, they don't care. Like, I don't care. You're going to learn Unreal on the job when you come. All the concepts are the same. The tools are different. What we're looking for is like, do you know how to use a game engine at all and implement work into it?
Exactly.
If I could say anecdotally, I think Unreal is a little bit easier to learn the animation system in. Unity is a little bit more opaque. It doesn't have like any less power. It's just a little less intuitive for implementing animations. I think a lot of that just comes down to Unreal's like a little bit more visual based. Like, all the scripting is like visual in nodes. Unity is definitely moving towards that as well. But I think Unreal is just a little bit more friendly, specific to animators. Yeah. So if I was to, that's why I chose Unreal to teach, is because I just think it's a little bit easier to learn. But Unity is powerful in its own ways and has a lot of benefits as well. So that's my non-answer to that. Sorry.
No, I concur 100%. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer to this either. I think you can't go wrong with either one of them. I think that those would be the two that I would choose between, though, because there are a couple others out there that you can get your hands on, but I don't think either one of them could possibly match the kind of accessibility that they built in. I feel like Unity's, the other thing you have to understand is Unreal got a head start on this. Unity is moving in the same direction, like Skylar mentioned, and they're playing kind of catch up right now. I have to admit that I feel like one thing that would lubricate your usage of Unity would be knowing a little bit of C#, which is a sort of a C scripting language. I find, speaking of opaqueness, I feel like there are a couple barriers where you'll feel like, where I feel like in Unreal, I feel like I never ever have to write a line of code. I don't need to know how to make my own classes. It's like it's all quite accessible through blueprinting alone, and I think that's quite a feat, to be honest with you. It's impressive that they've done that. So, but I mean, again, but if you happen to have a little bit of that, maybe you're down with that. I know. So technical animators, going back on that topic really quickly, there is this interesting new sort of trajectory now. This sort of story arc of technical animators. I now know at least two of them, who got to the point where they realize no matter what engine you're using, they get to the point where they will learn how to program. And the reason is because at some point, when you really want to do something very specific, the best way is to program it, because you can quite literally the blueprints that you're using in this visual scripting like environment that like Unreal has, those can be written in C++. You could make your own. And the big reason why most games will typically not ship as a blueprint only game is because blueprints are not, they're not what I would call, they're just not efficient. They're not, it's difficult to optimize these things, because what they're doing is, rather than we're programming something, is like it's an open canvas. You could be like, what do I want to do? And then they go and they build something that does specifically that. They can like hand tailor the code base to do exactly this and make it run efficiently. They can find lots of optimizations, where blueprints, they need to, it's like building something in Lego versus building something with clay. Lego, you have these parts, you can only build what you can. You could be very clever with it, and like you could do a lot of amazing things with Lego, but at the end of the day, there's going to be limitations, where if you're just building something out of like clay, it's like whatever, how much time do you got? And so I think that that would be the best analogy that I could use. But yeah, I totally agree with your quote unquote non-answer, because there's no real way of answering that question, I don't think.
Yeah.
What else we got? Everyone's asking, where the hell is this course that we keep bragging about? That's a good question. I'm just teasing you. It's never going to come out. Just kidding. We are going to be putting them out. I was waiting for this. I didn't want to put them out without properly introducing you to Skylar, and everyone can get an idea as to just how awesome he is and kind of understanding of what it's meant to give you. So we already got a bunch in the bag. So this week we'll start dropping them. I would imagine probably Friday, because today's already Thursday. So I don't think I'll get around to getting it done tonight. But they are going to be like, look for announcements and or just new droppings in the Learning Path. We have a new category called Learning Path, where there's already one. By the way, there's a bunch of others that need to go in there for Marco. And I have some news that I'll give you at the end after I cut Skylar loose. There's an update on the Amaru stuff that we did one of these a little while ago. I introduced you to Amaru, who is doing a sort of like building cinematics inside of Unreal. Learning Path. So I have an update on that, because you might be wondering the same question about where the hell is that? And I have some answers for you. What else? Unity.
Someone was asking kind of a follow up here about UE versus Unity at Riot. So we actually use both for different games. So like Valorant was built in UE4. Legends of Runeterra was built in Unity. Wild Rift was built in Unity. League of Legends is actually the oddball in that it uses like a proprietary in-house built engine, which I think was cool many years ago and is not so cool anymore once everybody realized how hard that is to support. So
yeah.
So even at Riot, like we use both. It's kind of like best tool for the job. Like I can't honestly like say upfront which one thing is better at which, but I do get like that. I think the general rule of thumb is that like Unity has slightly better like out of the box mobile development tools, as well as 2D tools. They have like a lot of 2D tools. So for like Legends of Runeterra, which is like a card game, they were able to take a lot of advantage of that kind of stuff. So yeah.
But I mean, that being said, either one could be usable for both these things. It's just that I think that the market, for some reason, Unity seemed to capture that indie market that were making games that were smaller in scope, and 2D games are a good example of that. A 2D game is a hell of a lot more. Well, that's a generalization that's not very fair. I've played some 2D games that are pretty big in scope, but I think on average, I think that they're probably not, because it kind of, I think it just makes sense just on the surface that it would be a little easier asset wise, but I think that either one could be used for either one of those purposes, and you'd be good to go. I don't want anyone having anxiety over learning one over the other at all. It doesn't make any sense. Just start doing it. Otherwise, this whole in this analysis paralysis is going to just stop you from getting in there and doing it. And the skills like Skylar was mentioning, they're very portable. No one's going to be like, the concepts are what's important. Just to get your brain thinking like this allows you, like the reason why I started teaching this in my iAnimate class of the intro to game animation. I did. This is why we're drinking the same Kool-Aid, Skylar and our, like, because we both get the best way of giving people a true launching pad into this industry is to just not hide it from them, show them. I was finding myself before Unreal, I was always saying things like, oh, well, you know, I would probably trim off the first few frames here. It's going to punch better in the game, be a bit more reactive, you know, and they had to take my word for it. I couldn't just show them, or they couldn't experience that for themselves. But now you can. And I think that in itself is what's important, because you start to learn as an animator, you start to learn these tricks. Like, all the things you thought you knew about animation needs to be re-examined, because little things don't make any sense anymore for a game. And now, how do you find a way of making an animation? How can you say as much as you can with fewer frames? Because these animations are going to be faster for sure. You need to still make sure that they feel heavy in some cases whenever possible. Like, how do you do that? And you learn that by doing that and experimenting, and then hopefully breaking down other games, and maybe being lucky enough to work with a veteran game animator on your team one day, and they're going to teach you all that they've learned over the years. This is the kind of stuff that is only really accessible and learnable unless you're actually doing it and feeling it. Like, there's a difference between looking at a game and being like, wow, that's pretty cool, the game animation looks really good, versus looking at it and being like, okay, let me reverse engineer that. Can I make that? What would go into making that? And then you start to realize how deep that rabbit hole goes. And then that's when you start to really start thinking like a game animator, because it's not so simple. You got to think on multiple layers and levels. Okay. What else we got? We got this one I just pulled up here. Could I put any character like the Azri rig, which is Jonathan Cooper's free rig, using your lessons? Can I do that is the question.
Yes. The very first episode of the track is actually like a setup episode that walks through how to set up the whole project and everything, specifically using the Thor rig from that Agora Studios had provided. If anything, the Azri rig is probably maybe even a little bit easier, because I think that has like a kind of like one-click export import into Unreal. And so as long as you can find the process for getting that rig into the game. Now, I will say up front that there's a lot of rigs out there that are not game ready and will not work. That rig just happens to be one that was specifically made for games and has like a clean skeletal hierarchy and all the stuff you need to just like plop it right into the game. And there are things that you could do that would be like skeleton specific in Unreal, but I tried to avoid using any of those techniques in the course. So even if you are using a different rig that has a slightly different bone structure, you should be able to follow along just as well through the different stages, and I don't think you should have any problems. So.
That's awesome news. So just to double down on that, I guess really what you need to be doing, and I have to admit that some rigs are advertised as game friendly and they don't always sort of live up to that reputation. So I think the main thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, Skylar, but my oversimplification would be, one thing you should be looking for sure is an entire singular skeleton that has a singular root. This is the number one thing that Unreal is going to want from you. Other game engines may not have that limitation, but Unreal definitely wants they don't want, for instance, these fancy cinematic rigs or like movie rigs where like they've gone and they've compartmentalized the different limbs. No, it needs to have one single root, and it should have, and speaking of root, there should be a root bone. Without a root bone, you would be, it would technically work, but it would, you would be limiting yourself from being able to do a lot of like any kind of root motion in the game and a bunch of other things that I'm not going to get into right now. But the point is, you're looking for one that has a root and then a hip and then everything else. If you don't have that, you may run into some problems. So just keep an eye out for those kind of details. Anything you want to add to that, or did I do an okay job?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. I think the main difference is that like a lot of cinematic rigs will have what looks like a root bone, but is often just like a group or something that. In which case, when you put them into Unreal, they just kind of blob around and don't quite work correctly. So,
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because the Thor rig, I believe when you were making those videos, I think, and because I think that they might have made some changes since then, but I believe, because we talked about this, there is a singular hierarchy, which is good, but it is buried under a group or two. A lot of riggers like to do that for organization, to kind of clean up the actual outliner, so you don't have this big like sprawling pile of nodes in there. They can just sort of pack it up like a nice little present, put a bow on it. I think you have a little trick for that, to kind of creating a bit of a cleaner hierarchy when you export it into the game engine. You show that in your
Exactly.
workflow.
Yeah. Yeah. And for most rigs, I would say, unless they were like specifically built extremely complicated, that you can probably dig down and find some way to get them in game. But it's definitely harder on rigs that weren't specifically built for that. And the ASCII rig is probably a great one if you want to use an alternative one, because I know I've actually brought that one into Unreal, and it is literally like click, export, import, done. Right. So
whoever did that knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they did a good job.
So I mean, I know this sounds like a little bit ridiculous, and because it sounds like I got to learn another thing, I cannot stress enough. Like this path that you might be on right now would benefit greatly from even learning a little bit about rigging. I can't like, because I'm telling you right now, when you get in there, Unreal has a lot of really powerful retargeting tools. That allow you to maximize the data that you create for skeletons, and you can be able to use on them other characters. It even allows you to do like pretty fancy, actually, real-time retargeting in there, where you can actually even have different proportions of characters. And there's all kinds of crazy things that you can do. So when it comes to getting the most bang for your buck as an animator inside of an engine like Unreal, you're going to want to at least understand some of these core concepts. So it would not be a bad idea to maybe put yourself through a little bit of rigging training if you can manage it. But I'm not saying it's a deal breaker if you don't, but I think you'd be more comfortable in there if you really wanted to get your hands super dirty. What else we got? We got let me scroll down a little bit. Do you teach? Oh, I don't know if that question. So I have a question from God's Blade 360. Do you teach special effects too, like magical attacks? Oh, so it's for Skylar. I guess he's wondering if you do anything beyond the actual character animation stuff in the workshop or in the learning path.
Not in this specific learning path. Maybe in the future, if I go on and do like attack animations as like a separate module or something, I may show how to implement them, but I don't think I will show how to make them, because that is like a whole
it sure
building
is.
Building the effects is like a whole art unto itself. And while I have done some of it in the past, I do not feel confident as a professional stepping on someone's toes who probably knows way more about it than I do. So that's probably a separate course from somebody who's smarter than me about VFX.
But the good news is I think once we light this little fire, there's nothing stopping you from picking up these little things on the side. I mean, one thing that's interesting about Unreal right now is not so long ago, they had an older system in there called Cascade. It's still there, but they haven't replaced it because they haven't removed it yet. But they also have Niagara, which is their new sort of future-proof as much as the foreseeable future-proof system that is way more robust. It could do all, and it came out at the same time that the Chaos system came out too, which is like their destruction system. So all these systems are all talking to one another in a much more like lower level, which allows you to do some pretty interesting things. And there's it's starting to get better. At the beginning, when it first came out, I was looking for Niagara tutorials. That's the new system in YouTube, and it was like tumbleweed. But recently, I've noticed some people that have been putting out some pretty good content. So I'd like to maybe I'll try to track some of these people down and see if they don't mind doing a little bit of a learning path. That'd be cool. I would take that. I'd sign up for that.
Absolutely. And Niagara is a lot more intuitive than Cascade was too. So I feel like once again, it's just getting easier and easier to learn these things. So
it's deeper, but also more accessible, which is, I don't know how they do that. It doesn't make any sense. Like it's crazy. We got another one here from God's Blade. We got, I'm going to take 3 more questions, and then we're going to let Skylar go because I want to take his whole night. Talking about becoming a game animator and how to implement animation in, okay, sorry.
They were asking what's happening here. Yeah.
let me just blindly read whatever you guys put on the screen. Go ahead. Go. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. That would be a bad idea. Let me scroll through. I think we might have covered them all. You might be off the hook.
I don't seem to be able to scroll down in the chat, so I can't verify that.
Yeah. It only lets me do this. You can see it, but you can't really. I kind of wish that I could give you those powers, because it'd be kind of fun if you'd be like, hey, go ahead and interact and pick your own questions. I think we're done. Did I miss like a really profound question that you still want to, like, is there something burning your brains that you want an answer to? Speak now or forever hold your peace, because otherwise we're going to let this fine man enjoy the rest of his evening. By the
That's
way,
it. We
so
answered all the questions in the world.
yeah, exactly. Doug, while buying you a little bit of time, chat, I'm going to say one more thing here. So just to better answer the question as to when, I don't have a specific time for you, but like I said, within the next 3 days, I would imagine you got somebody who's like doing a shout out. There's a rat shout out right here.
Shout out to the
There it
rats.
is.
You
That's
can
right.
join us, the Riot Animation team, when we
That's a good.
stream.
That's actually a great idea.
I guess that's worth plugging.
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to type it. If you don't know about this is amazing. So while I type it, you give everyone a bit of a background on this, which I think is an amazing initiative, by the way.
Sure. So the Riot Animation community a couple years ago started the Rats, which is the Riot Animation team. And we do streams now and then. They vary all over the place in topic and subject matter. Yeah, that's the link there. They get announced via various like Riot channels. But they range from like real reviews we've done in the past where you can drop any work you want in and we'll spend a couple hours giving feedback. I think we just did like a sort of Ask Me Anything a couple days ago as part of the launch of the Anim Challenge. We've done game shows. We've done guests. At one point we had like a guest speaker that was one of our friends that worked on Ori and the Will of the Wisps. So it's like a pretty big range of topics, but all focused around animation. So if you're interested in just, coming and chatting, we answer a lot of questions. I think every stream we answer questions. So if you have questions, you can come ask them in the chat.
These are long streams too. They're epic. Like they usually last a good 4 hours or so.
Many hours. Yeah. At one point we did like an all marathon day one. So
yeah, and you're a regular on that show, unsurprisingly. So I actually saw you on the last one, which was I think just yesterday, the day before.
I did not make the last one.
What? I thought you were there. I could have swore you were there.
Well,
really,
shows how much presence I have.
Yeah, that's it. It's like I felt your presence. You were definitely there in spirit. Maybe they had like
I ended up having an interview that was in the middle of it. So I had to skip it, unfortunately.
You know what it might have been? It might have been I went to the channel. I was looking at one of the previous recordings, maybe or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I've made literally every other stream, so you're not wrong. I'm usually in them.
Okay.
I try to prioritize it because they're a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's super fun to chat with other like animation folks, and usually it's like a pretty big crew. So when talking about like asking questions, that's one of the fun things about it is there's often like 10 or even
lots
like 12 of us there. So there's lots of interesting perspectives and stuff. So.
Yeah. That's I love the format. It's super casual. Like it's just sort of like what we're doing now, but just add another 10 people to it. And we'll just have, just topics and and then there's little presentations and people kind of talk a little bit about their job and, maybe a recent problem they try to solve. And it's just very anecdotal and it's worth its weight in gold. I really do highly recommend that. It's by the way, for convenience sake, we actually already auto host that on Agora.Community in our live page. So if they're streaming, you will find them there. It should auto load you'll notice when you're on Agora.Community that the live icon will become red, which says someone's streaming, and you head over there. And if it's them, they will be playing right there. You have to find it. Otherwise, if there's more than one group that's streaming, you just have to maybe change channels until you get there. But you kind of need to know the rat schedule, I guess, to really know when and how. You guys, you publish that on Twitch so people know when. You guys are regularly streaming?
So it gets posted to a couple places. It gets posted on Twitch, usually with like at least a week in advance, as well as to our Discord, which, oh gosh, I don't have the link to it right here. I have to search for the link to our Discord server. We have a Rats Discord server. If anybody in the chat has the Rats Discord server, they can feel free to post it. And then it also gets pushed through the Twitters of just about every animator on the team. So if you follow any of the Riot animators, particularly Lana Baczynski, is usually the sort of ringleader that posts all the stuff. So if you follow her on Twitter, you'll get all the good info about the Rats.
Yeah, for sure. She's quite prolific too. She's been around for a while. She was over at Blizzard and she was working on Heroes of the Storm. She's an animator as well. And so now she comes with all this like, I don't know, she's just a natural. Like you see her, like she really truly is the ringleader. She kind of like whips that big group of people into something that feels super like organic and it flows. And by the way, I did screw up I see a lot of people complaining about my crappy link. I screwed something up. Can you take a look at what I wrote? What do I have wrong? I thought it was rat animation. Wait, is it rat animators, not rat animation, right? Is it rat animators?
Yeah, it's rat animators.
The
second link that her art or Sue her art posted. Yeah. And they posted the Rats Discord server there, which is actually also a pretty cool community. There's not only do some of the Riot animators like constantly answer questions in there, but it's sort of become its own little thing where all the animators that are in there answer the questions, and it's sort of become a like self-sustaining environment where people like give feedback on work. And so if you're just looking for somewhere else to like go post animations and get some feedback, there's a lot of animators who hang out in there and are really generous with their time as far as like answering questions and giving feedback on work and whatnot. So,
which is exactly what you want when you're trying to sort this stuff out. Yeah. Okay. So that is correct. It's rat animators. My bad, Chad. I failed you. Okay. So looks like we just have there's a couple quick ones we can probably handle, and then we're gonna cut. Do you have like 5 more minutes? Is it okay? Or?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So there's a question here. I'm scrolling back up a little bit because there's a couple there that happened. It was. Are the rigs okay there? How about this one? So are the rigs for games do they allow bending bones and detail face controls like feature film rigs? I guess that's it depends, right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, you can do it like, for example, you can like import blend shapes as part of the rig and stuff and have all that complicated stuff. I would say as a animator who is fairly technical, that's still beyond me on quite how to like implement it. So like if you have a complicated rig that has more than just like a joint based facial rig,
which is standard,
which is pretty standard.
Yeah. That's typically what you'll find.
I would say that most rigs I've worked with have just had a bone-based facial rig, and they can be like the joint counts used to be a problem in games, but in the more modern generations of consoles and PCs and stuff, they've become less and less important, less and less of a deal. So putting like another 100 bone face rig in there is no longer a problem, which it used to be. But I would say generally most of the rigs I've worked with have just been like bone-based facial rigs. But I'll be totally honest that I've been working mostly on game prototypes. So that sort of like high-end facial animation has not been on my radar for a couple of years. So
no, definitely not.
You might actually have more experience with that than me.
Yeah, it's so just to talk a little bit about that more, but yeah, I totally agree. It is the standard bones. Blend shapes are definitely supported inside of Unreal. It's not as direct because, obviously if it's all bone based, it can all be captured in that animation because you're gonna plot down, you're gonna bake that animation down into all the bones on the skeleton, and then it drives the entire character, including the face. Where the morph targets are on a separate thread, so there's a bunch of extra steps that need to go into capturing that and making sure that they're driven. And also making sure that they're synchronized to the actual body animation, because now you're dealing with like 2 different channels that are potentially going to be, not synchronized, which is another thing. So there's a bit more to deal with, but the internet will show you the way for sure. There's definitely a handful of useful tutorials I've seen out there on YouTube if you're interested in kind of figuring that out. But it is a thing, absolutely. The question regarding the bendable bones, this is also a thing for sure. It depends. Like the tricky part is to build a rig that allows for that doesn't break the cardinal rule of what we were talking about. This sort of this bone chain. You don't. I think that it doesn't. Typically, the Unreal is not going to. It's not going to like very much if you have multiple bones going down. This will also cause lots of problems with retargeting. But if you break your whole upper arm, for instance, into a bunch of like a bunch of bones in a series, it's not a great idea. You typically want these extra bones to be like leaf nodes that you'd be actually parenting to. So you'd actually have a shoulder bone, but then it'd have 3 children, let's say. One of them is going to be like a roll bone or maybe or deformer bone, and then a lower one that's also the same thing, and then eventually your elbow joint. So and if you want to have lots of deformation and lots of smear frames and bendable joints, it requires a lot more skinning work and a lot more sort of goofing around with the rig, but it's doable. And it used to be that you never saw a lot of these. Like for me, I'm obsessed with trying to get very very true squash and stretchable characters in a game, because back in the day of like the Jack and Daxter day, like the golden era of like really cartoony but very well animated characters in games, their squash and stretch wasn't really squash and stretch. It was really just a non-uniform scale that they were applying. It didn't really account for the deform, like the sort of the volume control. You scale something down on the y-axis, you have to scale out on Z and X. That wasn't a thing. And now you can do those things, but it does require quite a bit more setup and maybe technical know-how, but yeah, there is a light at the end of that tunnel.
Yeah, and one of the challenging things with a lot of games that are being made now is that, like, as you noted, retargeting is becoming more and more important. And for those of you who aren't like super familiar with games, like basically what we're talking about when we say retargeting is like, hey, I build an animation on one character, and then let's say I have a bunch of other bipeds in the game that are like different proportions and stuff. As long as they share the same skeleton, generally you can share those animations, and it'll sort of fix the proportions and stuff. But if you're working on a character that is unique, you can actually do just about anything anything you could or want to do in film, you could achieve on a unique character. It just tends to be something that's not prioritized because retargeting is so important in a lot of games. Like any game like Fortnite or any game where you have more than one humanoid character in the game, you have to support retargeting. Otherwise you're just like making yourself have to build assets for all those different characters in the game. So
and I mean, even though consoles and PCs have become a lot more powerful over the years, there's still going to be a limitation to just how many animations you can actually have running in memory at any given time. There is a theoretical limit still, and we still have what are called animation budgets. Engineers on the team are usually dishing out like, hey, here's your budget, be aware of it, because if you go over it, we're going to start truncating. Like we just can't, like there's only so much room, there's only so much pie, and everyone needs a piece of that pie, and animation gets this. And sometimes there's some negotiation involved, and but at the end of the day, there's only so much, and there's no bottomless pit when it comes to memory, especially when you're dealing with consoles. PCs can get away with a bit more because obviously PCs are going to typically have a bit more memory, but consoles are powerful. But what I find is interesting is where it becomes really hard is games that want to be very cross-platform. The lowest common denominator right now tends to be the Nintendo Switch, which a lot of people want to make games for, depending on the type of game. And it is very powerful, but it's still a mobile device. So you have to be careful with like just how much you're going to put in the game. And now suddenly the question is like, okay, what do we do? Do we make a game and then kind of port to the Switch? Or do we really want to truly make the game and it's just as good and enjoyable from all the different perspectives and look for that sort of common ground? So depending on the game you're on, you may or may not have to be extra careful with things like that. The reusability of assets. I mean, take a look at level artists. I still think that they are the true magicians in the game industry because of what they do. They can somehow make these sets so unique, but they're always just reusing assets in different ways. Like, it's crazy what they can do. I'm always fascinated by level artists. I think that they're next level. I don't know how they do it.
Well, and I mean, I think it's getting the optimization question is becoming even more prevalent as like mobile gaming becomes a bigger thing, like literally on phones. I mean, like when they're building Legends of Runeterra, the League of Legends card game, they had to figure out how to make it look as good as it does on PC on like phones from 3 years ago. Do you know what I mean? Which is what a lot of people are playing those kind of games on now. And while as me as like, I mean, gosh, I'm like 34 and I already feel old when it comes to like the target audience for a lot of these things. I mean, the truth is just like more people in the world are playing games on mobile devices. So that's going to be, over the next 10 years, everybody's going to be wanting to. You have to optimize not only for the Switch, but all the way down to like a 3-year-old phone, So. Yep.
And even VR, VR is a lot. There's a lot of heavy lifting in VR, and it's crazy because now we have like these Quest headsets that are standalones, and like even Oculus Go before that was a thing, and it's it's amazing what we're trying to like. In those devices are really just glorified phones. I mean, they're because it can't be much more than that, because otherwise it would be too heavy on your head, because it has to have a whole processor, like it's doing it all for you, unlike a Rift where it's using the computer completely, right? But anyways, I don't want to digress too far. There's a question here that's very specific. Do you work with, I don't even know how to pronounce that.
See, I'm gonna be ashamed here, because I do know that this is one of the animators, and I don't know which animator it is, because I don't know which username this links with.
Got it.
If you can say the name of the person, but I'll be honest, I've been the only animator on my team for about a year. So while I've worked with a lot of the animators at Riot in the past, generally on our prototype games, they're very small teams and often have like a very small art team. So direct right now, I'm not working with any other animators directly. It's just been me. So I've spent a year working from home during the pandemic as the only animator on my team. It's been a fun time. Yeah,
you're like a department of one. Well, I mean, that's what exactly. I mean, it's because you're doing all this prototyping, right? So it's like you're kind of trailblazing. And if Riot comes up with, if you're on a team that seems to be like, wow, we should invest in this game, that's when you'd start like throwing a bunch of animators. But ironically, you'd probably move on to the next prototype at that point, right? You're kind of like first one on the surface of Mars.
Yeah, at the least, that original team will often take the game at least into and through pre-production. But it is true that sometimes people end up moving on to other things depending on expertise. So it is kind of a weird path to be at R&D, because you may never actually see the thing to ship necessarily. But
which is even more weird during a pandemic, because you're working from home, right? So it's sort of like, do I even have a team? Like, do I even exist? Who am I? Where am I? So I honestly, Skylar, thank you for being here. Thank you for actually spending a whole other 30 minutes here. It was totally very, very, very generous of you. Thank you for your dedication, and thank you for your wisdom, and more importantly, thank you for this learning path that you've been working on. So I see a question here at the end. I've already answered that question, but I will answer it again after I let this fine man go. Thank you for being here tonight. There'll be more on this in the coming days. And awesome.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I could talk all day about animation stuff, man. So you're pretty much cutting me off. So, but I'm going to go eat some dinner. But do that. Thank you so much for having me, and I really hope that everybody does enjoy and find the courses useful. So, I'm excited to see what y'all think. Have a great night, everybody.
Yeah. Cheers. Talk to you soon, there, Skylar. Well, there you go. There you have it. There's the big news. This has been something we've been cooking for a while, and pretty excited by it. It's a I think the reason I'm excited by it is because it's just taking a page right out of my book. You know me well enough to know that I probably say these things all the time, and just how important it is for animators that want to get into the game industry to at least embrace the technical side. You don't need to be a pro, but at least start blending in a little bit and learning a little bit of the vernacular, and just making sure that you understand how these bits fit together, right? We talk about Lego bits. Is kind of what it's like. It's like, what are the Lego bits? What kind of shapes do we have to work with here? So that at the end of the day, because if you're the one building the actual shape and color of the Lego, you kind of need to know how it's going to be used. Otherwise, you might kind of miss the point. It's very awkward when an animator makes an animation. They spend a lot of time on it. Oh, and Skylar, I still see you. You can actually, I feel bad for Skylar. He's probably like, can I go? Am I going to break it? You could also stay if you want. But I just, if you need to leave, you can just hit the little leave button at the top. He's backstage. You can't see him. But please don't feel like you need to disappear. There it is. Okay, later, dude. Talk to you later. So this happens to all the guests, because I forget to tell them like what happens when they're actually done, and they just sit there kind of in the background, and they're like, I don't know. I don't want to break the stream. I lost my train of thought, but basically, it's important to understand. Oh yeah, I remember saying, so if you're making an animation and you put it in the game, and then it's just like, sometimes it's like, the look on a designer's face when they're just like, did you like even listen? Did you even read my brief? Like on what this, animations are serving a mechanical purpose in the game. and supplying this cool player fantasy thing, right? That is what we need to do. So we need to find a way of balancing those things, and we can't make animations that are awkwardly not going to fit into that scenario. Like animations that are the number one problem I have with animators that make animations for a game that don't understand games is they make these animations that are just long and drawn out and too slow. And it's like, dude, like, have you ever played a game before? And that's the thing that you can learn quickly by experiencing that loop on your own, making it like try to make a jump animation for a game and then try to implement it in the game, and then be that player that like put the turn your player brain on and be running around and hitting that jump button and feeling how slow and punishing that is, and then realizing, oh, now I get it. That's why the designers always look at me like side-eyed whenever I actually make these animations that are a bit too long, because it sucks. It's not fun to play. So it's important. You can't, I always tell people game animators need to think of themselves as game developers first. That is key. Think of yourself as a developer, and that way you're just happy to be bringing animation to the party as a skill. But you need to be held responsible for the and accountable for the overall impact of that animation and how it feels in the hand of the player. Right? We animators are essentially creating one of the most overt and most relevant. There are many other departments, like audio is gigantic. Audio design is so important in a video game. So is the interface, the UX. All these things need to work together in harmony to provide a pleasant experience for the player. And so naturally, we need to understand that there's a psychology to that. We need to get inside that headspace, and we are always trying to find ways of having our cake and eat it too. How can we make this look really great, but also play really well? And that's what Skylar was touching on with his idea of like, it's not just about making that one animation that's going to make the game. It's about making several animations that will work together and sometimes play many at the same time in order to make the game what it needs to be on both a mechanical and aesthetic level. So there's so much to learn, but you can learn a lot of this on your own just by literally providing yourself the proper canvas to try some of these things. You want to learn how to paint? Buy some paint, buy some canvas, and start painting, because you will figure it out. Especially if you're watching YouTube videos and you're learning techniques and you start to learn some of the fundamental underlying ideas. It's the same thing for animating for a game. You cannot learn how to animate for a game by not actually getting those animations into a game. I feel so strongly about this that I don't want to bore you forever with me just talking like a broken record in circles, but it is gigantically important. And the other thing too is when you're at a job interview as a game animator, you're looking for that first job, they will detect this right away. Philosophically, they'll be able to understand, they'll be able to see just from your responses whether you're on that level. I'm going to tell you one quick anecdote before I end this stream. And I think I've told this before, so I apologize if this is a rerun. But one of my first jobs out of school was actually for a video game company, a game company in St. Catharines, Ontario, called Silicon Knights. Some of you might know who that is. And I got shot down big time because I played a lot of games, but I didn't understand enough about how games were made. And some of the questions they were asking me, I just didn't know how to answer. And what they were trying to do, I remember being kind of almost offended at the time. Like, man, I know how to animate. Just give me the job. I'll be able to figure it out. But what I think they were doing is they were a little nervous, as rightfully so. Now that I've been on that side of the table, they're worried about hiring an animator who just literally has a hard time coming to terms and grasping what being an animator for a game really means. Because sometimes retention is a problem. If you're coming in and you don't know anything about this, and you're all excited about making an animation for a game, you get that job, they train you up. And then you leave. You go, you go try to chase down that job at Disney or DreamWorks or Pixar or whatever, because that's really what you wanted to do. And that's not totally uncommon. Sometimes animators, they find themselves at a game company and they realize, I don't know if I like this, because it's not just about polishing that shot to like some sort of like ultra crazy level of polish. It's not about that. It's about, I think I used the word before, gestalt. It's like you're trying to, the experience is not just about the perfect shot. It's about all these things coming together to create a perfect experience in the game for the player. That moment that feels good and looks cool and does all the things. And that's on a whole other spectrum of light that is way beyond the single spectrum of just like, and I'm not saying that one's more important or more complicated than the other. They're just different. It's a different focus, and it's not for everybody, that I can assure you. So you really want to also maybe do diligence on trying to put some of these things together in a game just to see if you like that. You know, maybe you're going to be like, I don't know, like making loops and making cycles all day is not super exciting to me. Well, then maybe it doesn't matter how much you like playing a game. Maybe it's not the right job for you to be an animator for a game, because it just might not be. Maybe there's a better job for you in a different industry as an animator. So that's another reason why exposing yourself to this process is important. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming. I promised that I would answer this question that was already asked, and that you probably showed up a little bit later. This one right here. So yes, it will be. It's not available now, but it will be available in the next few days. So we've already got a bunch of his episodes. The first episode's already. There's another reason why I've been dragging my heels here, which is a perfect segue to talk about Amaru. So one of the reasons, it is 100% free. All the stuff the only thing that's not free on our website is to order a review. And even then, we often do promotions where we give some of those things out for free. So, the mission from the beginning was to give access to people as much of this content for free as possible. So yes, absolutely. One of the things that we need to build on the back end is a way of doing playlists, just to make it a little easier for you to be able to like find that learning path that you're on. And when there's a new one, you get notified and you can see it in chronology, like of which one do I do in what order. Right now, we're just naming them, like the name is in order, but once we have enough of them on the platform, it might get a little bit more annoying to find them in the right order. So I'm also I'm kind of dragging my heels a little bit, which is annoying, I'm sure, for you. But for instance, I don't know if you guys have seen the quadruped one that we dropped. We only dropped the first 3. I'm going to drop the next, I think probably 3 in the next couple days. But like I said, it's going to get maybe a little bit annoying, especially when there's multiple learning paths all together to try to find the one you want and the right number. So this is something that's coming, this idea of having proper playlists. So look out for that. That's going to be hopefully in the next the next weeks ahead, we'll have something like that. So it might be a little bit more of a pain to find the episode that you're looking for a little while, but don't worry, we're coming to the rescue with that. So Amaru, let's talk about Amaru really quick before we end. So Amaru, who was a guest on this exact show not so long ago, he just recently put out a short film in the middle of building a learning path for you when it comes to making cinematics inside of Unreal. So his whole thing was like, it's all about cinematography and it's about lighting and rendering inside of Unreal. It's like pushing the visual limits of what Unreal can do, which is a bit of a departure from your typical animation content. But that's exactly the kind of stuff that this platform was always meant to do. We never ever meant for it to only be animation. So you can look forward to, in the coming years, more things like modeling and rigging. All these things are going to be. As a matter of fact, we have a talk about kind of rigging tomorrow, actually. So you might want to show up to our stream tomorrow morning at, I think it's at, I always forget what time these streams are, 10:30 or something, or 10. I think it's 10 o'clock. Or maybe no, I think 10:15 Eastern Standard in the morning. There's going to be a stream with a very talented individual, and he is one of the founding members of Rigging Dojo. So you might want to, Brad Clark, exactly. So you are correct. It is definitely Brad Clark. He's going to be coming we have a cool announcement to make, which I think, especially if you're into anim challenges, we get there's a very popular request that we get at Agora Community all the time. I don't want to steal all my thunder right now. I want to save some for tomorrow. And if you were really paying attention, if you really want to try to spoil the thunder, you can go and take a look at some of the more recent Twitter activity from my Overanimated Twitter account. You'll probably put the pieces together to figure out what the announcement is tomorrow. But even if you put it in the chat, I'm not going to validate it. I want it to be a bit of a surprise. So Amaru. So Amaru is so what he wanted. So he loved this. I don't think he's done a lot of live streaming stuff, and he loved the experience so much being on the show here with me that he's like, I really think that it might be more interesting for me to do this this training series rather than going back and updating all the recordings he did. To kind of coincide and be a bit more directly related to essentially reverse engineering. Like he wants to feel like, okay, cool, I made the short film. Wouldn't you like to know how I did it? Well, let's walk you through step by step. What did I do? What's my process? That's essentially what the training series is. And he thought, wouldn't it be cool if we did this live? And I'm like, yes. So we're trying to reformat things right now. So I think what we're going to be doing is something, yet another first for Agora Community. We're going to try to do a learning path that will be, of course, recorded and put in the library. But if you want, you could also even show up to them live, so you can actually ask some of the questions that might come up during the actual the actual presentation. I don't know exactly how that's going to go because we can't answer all the questions. It would slow things down too much. But I think what we'll probably do is the same thing we usually do, is like let him do the sort of like do the class or the singular little training capsule, because it's obviously going to be episodic, and then always save room at the end to sort of take questions. Is probably how we're going to do it. We're working out the format right now. So if you're wondering why the radio silence on Amaru and where the hell did that material go, it's in the works, just making some changes. I mean, these people are doing this out of the goodness of their own heart. They're not getting paid for it. This is all volunteer. So, I want to always make sure that I'm catering to what they want to do, right? It's important that this platform is always meant to be an intersection between people that are knowledgeable, that are also generous, that want to share their skills. We want to make sure that the platform is providing them not only a platform for their stuff and for their knowledge, but also helping them bring it to this community in a way that excites them and that works for them, just as much as that we're trying to make it accessible for all of you people who are hungry for the knowledge. Making it very accessible is also important. So I'm always trying to balance both sides of that equation. So more news on that to come soon. Just to react to your comment right here. This one's a good one because it's funny. And I totally agree with you. I don't know how we do it, to be honest. It's not easy. It comes from passion. We love this. We love doing this, and we love that you love it. And so it fuels us. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said that it doesn't require many late nights, because it does. It really does. But yeah, we do it for you because I think it's important that we pay back, pay back into the karmic universe. That people were there to help me learn when I was just a young lad trying to learn this animation stuff when at the beginning. And so it's a little bit easier to do that now because of the internet and because of technology. So it and I just like it. I think anybody who comes to my streams, they know that I get excited by just I like the medium. I like live streaming. I think it's just a lot of fun. So I'm not. This is not painful for me. This is really almost becoming an obsession for me. On that note, no need to apologize if you're not able to do a stream on Friday. Yeah, I always feel bad. Thanks for saying that. It's because, what happens is I do a lot of streams during the week, and then I realize, holy crap, I'm really behind in all of the other things. Sometimes Agora related things, sometimes it's actually work related that I need to kind of catch up on. And so I have been known lately to bail a little bit on my my over animated streams. And so what I normally will do is I try to put a priority on the Sunday streams, because that's an area where I feel like I don't want to get used to not doing those, because I do like free reviews on stream, and I think it's important. I want to continue to do that. But the Friday streams, like I normally stream, or I'm supposed to stream Friday nights and Sunday nights, and usually around 10 o'clock Eastern Standard PM. And the Friday nights are supposed to be like demo streams where I'm just doing fun things. Sometimes I learn something for the first time with people, and sometimes I'm showing something that I think is particularly important. What I like to be able to do is eventually get to the point where I can do streams, but like still feel like it's connecting it to Agora. So it doesn't feel like I'm just doing it off in like some random corner of the universe, but I'm doing it in a way that allows me to get more bang for the buck. And what I mean by that is I typically, if I'm going to put my energy out there, I want that energy to be able to like help more people as opposed to just, I see that. And that's what I like. What I love about Agora is it allows us to force multiply and to echo and to reinforce all these content creators and give them a bit more of an amplifier, like a megaphone, to be able to reach more people, because I think that they have a lot to share, and there's a lot of people out there that would love to be able to hear what they have to say. It's amazing if you think about it. This community has grown quite a bit, but we still see only like somewhere anywhere between 20 to maybe like 50 people on average showing up to these streams. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that is just the percentage of people that are available that are interested in doing this, showing up to a live stream. But it's also because we haven't really pushed beyond, we haven't done any real marketing. We haven't really tried to get the word out beyond our own organic sort of viral messaging, like our own communities sort of spreading the word on Facebook and YouTube. So I think it's something we're going to be starting to look at now. Now that we feel like we hit a stride, we feel like the content we have is good. It makes sense to try to get it out to more people. So we're going to try to come up with some ways that we feel like we can get the word out, so more people can enjoy these streams. But if you know anybody who's looking for animation streams and content that's like this for free, then make sure you do pass along the appropriate information and links. Okay, I'm done. I'll see everybody on the next stream. There is one tomorrow. Like I said, if you can make it out, great. Brad Clark's an amazing guy with a ton of experience. It's funny because I didn't know a lot about him, but having spent some time with him over the last few weeks talking back and forth about, possible collaborations, I realized just how much of a giant he's been in the sort of the technical animation sort of scene. He's 100% a legitimate genius when it comes to lots of things. When it comes to rigging and motion builder, and even Blender recently, he put together this really amazing thing for the Anim Exchange that he called it the Rosetta Stone for animators if they want to get into Blender. And it was like, I love it, Rosetta Stone. It's because that's really what you're doing. You're trying to translate from one language to another language. You don't need to relearn grammar. You just need to relearn the specific rules to that language of grammar. Every language has grammar. Every language is more or less structured in some similar way. Although I would have to admit that some languages really push the limit of that generalization. But for the most cases, it's like the concept of spoken word is, or even the written word is, there is overlap, and so you can really just kind of relearn it. So he's quite an impressively tall person. I've been told. I've never met him in person, but I've seen some pictures and I've heard some stories. So anyways, yes. So please do make it up for that, because we do have a very special announcement, especially for those who, like I said, who are into the Anim Challenge. Especially there's something that's particularly interesting for this month's Anim Challenge that you might want to show up just to hear that announcement, because it's going to be a big one. And we're going to hint at something maybe possibly even bigger at that talk tomorrow. It'll be Brad, but it'll also be an associate of his who's going to be kind of a special surprise guest that will be there tomorrow as well. All right. So thanks again for showing up. You could be doing anything right now, but here you are listening to me go on and on. And thank you for being here for that. And thank you for being part of the community. It wouldn't be anything without you. So awesome. Thank you for being here. Talk to you soon. Cheers.